Okay. So this part is kind of like an emotional part, right? This is the third part of our segments. Is marriage, divorce, and cultural pressures. This question was supposed to go to Diana, but I know she had to see a patient. But I think we can all just chime into this, right? That how does it affect a marriage when one partner is more used to life in America than the other? And one of the questions I think kind of addressed this a little bit. To me, I think that for the most part, women adapt pretty quickly. We adapt pretty quickly than men. And we have to take that into
True.
consideration.
Mm-hmm.
Most African men, for the most part, they're stuck in their own ways. And they will tell you, I'm an African man, I cannot do that, you know? So
That
it
that's
takes
that's a that's a cover up for this is all I know.
Yeah, it
And I'm
is. It
not willing
is.
to learn.
Exactly. And they can change because you cannot say
Right.
that this is who I am. This is who I'm going to continue to be because when things evolve, you have to evolve with it. You cannot just be stuck in your own ways because it's
Right.
that stoicism that most people have that end up breaking their relationships. Because if we can adapt, so as men can adapt too. So I think those are some of the things that I feel like when you're in America, you have to do what Americans do. When you're in Rome, they say do what the Romans do. You want to be in Rome, you want to be in the US, you want to keep acting as if you were in Cameroon. It will not work. So for me, that's what I see. So what do you see when it comes to that, Josie?
Yeah. So the challenges are enormous. And I was looking at the question here. I don't want to speak out of turn. Let me see what the topic
So I
is.
think that one was how does it affect a marriage when one partner is more used to life in America than the other?
I mean, it can affect it in both ways, good or bad,
Mhm.
depending on who came first, right? So let's assume that the male partner was here first. And is this a marriage that was already established back home? Is this a marriage that I came here and then when I got married to somebody back home? So it goes a lot of ways depending on the circumstance, right? But let's use the example of a couple who were already married and one person came, and then a couple of years later, the other one joined them. It goes back to communicating expectations. There are a lot of challenges, and it's men. We are not picking on you. It's just statistics.
Right.
Most men, they're just stuck in their ways, as you said. They're not willing to learn. They're not open. And I mean, the most they can do is, follow their career path and do the best they can as far as career wise. They will not look to the left or to the right until you twin and twin and twin. But there are a lot of challenges. One of them is the mind feeling like, oh, I brought you here, so I have rights over you. You must do what I say, what I tell you, because I've been in this country before you came and all or whatnot, right?
You're not
So
even
that's one of
doing them a favor. Like when you bring someone here,
right.
it's not doing them a favor because they probably would have even been doing better if they were back home and just eating your money, right?
Let's assume that you did them a favor by bringing them. I mean, that's your spouse. You wanted to live with them. You don't want them
Yeah.
to be somewhere else and you be somewhere else. But the
Yeah.
challenge becomes when the person who was here first thinks they know everything and they should be the source of truth for everything with regards to what you want to do.
Mhm.
Right. So
Yeah.
that's one of the challenges
Yeah.
that
And
we
you see.
face when one spouse has more experience in the US. That's
Yeah.
the bad part of it. The good part of it could be, hey, okay, I'll give you an example of some coworkers that I met. The lady came first, and then the husband came later, more like 5 years later. And they were both nurses back home, right? They both went to nursing school, met in school, got married, had a child back home, even before the wife came. So when the wife came, she did everything, and the husband joined. They were both nurses. Now, the process of becoming a nurse here is a little bit different.
Different, right.
And so she had already gone through the process, gotten her license, and started working as a nurse before the husband came. And when the husband came, it was a challenge for him. But she could walk him through that process. This is just one aspect, right? It's just the aspect of career. So she was able to stick with him, encourage him. He took NCLEX like 4 or 5 times before he passed.
Mm-hmm.
If that wife was not supportive,
yeah,
she could be like 2 questions ago when the woman earns more than the man. Because when you first come, you're not going to earn more than the person who's been here 5 years, even if you are working at the same job, right? It's going to take a long time to catch up with that gap. But this is a good example because this spouse was able to support their husband to make sure that they go through the process. And you know how things change. Like even someone who took NCLEX 4 years ago and the person taking it today is different.
Right.
She was able to walk him through all those challenges and for him to be successful in that career path. And I'm sure if something that difficult and complex could be worked out, I'm sure that they have a very happy marriage because obviously they are communicating, right?
Right. And I mean, the adaptation part, like we say, it's hard for most men to adapt. But one thing that I've seen that most um, African women are complaining about too is that this men is easy for them to adapt when it comes to being with another woman of another culture. Say, for instance, if they came here and they married an
Yes. Yeah.
American woman, or they married they married an American, they will adapt. You see them going around carrying. I saw one of my friends. It was too funny. Like he had the child on his back and wrapped the child up with a wrapper. I was like, oh my gosh! Like
Uh-huh.
I'm pretty sure if you were with an African woman, you would not have done that. Or if they cannot
Okay.
cook, yeah, he will understand and say, well, you know what? She can't cook, so we're gonna have alternatives. But then if it's an African woman that's not cooking, then you start hearing complaints like, oh my gosh, she doesn't even cook, she doesn't do that. So you get all those
Yeah.
challenges. But I mean, things are evolving with time, things are evolving, and I'm just hoping that people are changing. And I do see some of that change in most men nowadays because they're
Oh yeah.
gradually unlearning those behaviors to say, okay, I have to support her. She needs the help. But the men who are still stuck in their ways, it doesn't even matter because even if you're going to go back home or you're going to go get marry a woman for whatever you marry that woman, it's still going to be the same thing. You bring that woman here, she too is going to come. She's going to get used to this American way of life, and things are going to change. Do you have anything to add in this perspective, Priska?
Yes. And again, please can you remind me again of the question just to make sure I'm in line with everything?
This one was, how does it affect a marriage when one partner is more used to American way of life than the other?
Okay. It's one of those things that I'll piggyback again on what Josie said, that is like expectations are not clearly explained.
Mm-hmm.
That a lot of times, right, the right conversations are not had.
Mm-hmm.
Um, People see they like each other and it's like, okay, he looks this way, or he looks that way, or she looks this way and she looks that way. And then it's like, okay, we like each other, we're in love, let's just bam them. And is the moment that now is everything is said and done, that's when you start having those communications about expectations. So even for the person that came here first, or like wherever somebody is, if they have those conversations, like when you think of marriage, for example, what do you see? Like, what are you thinking of? Like, just paint me, for example, like the perfect picture of a wife. Like, what are your expectations? And he says, like, oh, I need my wife to cook, I need my wife to clean, or whoever is here first, right? Like, some guys maybe have been here first. Let me say, for example, in terms of the man, right? And they feel like the reason to go back home or the reason why they want to get married is because they still have like that African mindset, regardless of how long they have been here. It's like, oh, I'm still want something that's like going to cook, going to clean, I'm going to do all of that, still go to work and stuff like that. So, like, if you're the woman that is back home in your mind, you're already like, okay, with all those expectations, like, how do you want the kids to be raised? Like, based on how long you've been here, like, do you have a cultural shift? What is your mind looking like? What are your expectations, right? If the woman or whoever is here first, say the guy is here going to get married, once that lady is able to have a clear understanding of what his expectations are, like forget about the United States, because trust me, it's not better anywhere. The grass is not green on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
If that person's expectations is what you're ready to do and what you're ready to live with, go ahead. But even if, let me say, like the lady was here before, explain to this guy, like, hear what his, especially the women that have been here first, and they
Mm-hmm.
have seen that cultural shift, that cultural change. Don't assume that because you're talking to the guy, you're telling him what's up, you're telling him how the United States is, automatically he's going to buy into that new way of life. No, have those real difficult conversations.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me exactly what your expectations are. Even if the woman is here first, she's going to get married. Let's assume that these people were not married before, they were not married prior, right? Have this conversation. What do you expect in a wife? And let the woman also state her own expectations, right? That I know you're in Cameroon, maybe this and that, but trust me, it's not I like regardless where you are, we are the ones in this marriage, we are the one in this union, right? So these are what my expectation of a husband is. This is what my expectations of a spouse is. Like if those difficult conversations are hard, even go in and ask him, how are your parents' marriage? Ask the lady, how was your own parents' marriage? Because like unconsciously, right? People expect from their spouses what they grew up seeing. No matter how much they want to say, oh, I'm going to divert from wherever I grew up seeing, even if maybe it was toxic and it was abusive, without the right healing, without the right counseling, without the right growth and therapy, they will go back to those same patterns. So, regardless of who is here first,
Mm-hmm.
if you're the one back home, have those conversations. If you are the one that is here, have those conversations. Because once those expectations are known, it's going to reduce the conflict. It's going to reduce like the barrier of whoever is where first. So there's that sync, there's that synergy when both of you come together, because you can bring the culture, like the good aspects from back home, because obviously we have a lot of good aspects, and whoever
Yes.
here can bring the good aspects. But you already know upfront, if it's a fufu that you cannot swallow, run,
Mm-hmm.
because
Mm-hmm.
it will not change.
It will not
Don't
change.
feel
That
like,
is true.
oh,
Yeah.
this strong Cameroonian fashion man, when he comes to America, his mentality will change. It will not change. He
Mm-hmm.
will just become more frustrated when he comes, especially if the woman is here first, because the pressure is going to be choking him from the day he comes. Because he's going to like, so have clear conversations so you know exactly what this person's mindset is and what their expectations of a spouse is.
That is so true, Priska. So while you're at it, can you just add like some of the stressors, some of the outside stressors that you think will make African marriages fail in the US or break down?
Yes. So as I was doing my research today, like one of the things, actually from experience, we have a lot of family, family influence. Like a lot of like there is too many hands in the pot. The Bible stated it clearly. A man will leave his house and he will come with his wife, and they will become one.
They will become one.
And
But in an African family, they become 10
in
or
our pot,
20.
it is the man's mom's hand is inside the pot deep. The father's hand is in the pot. The woman's hand
So,
is in the pot. Like to a place where you're asking people, right? Like, who is the most important person to you, like in your list of priority? A man is going to put his, maybe a good man is going to put his kids, he's going to put his mom before he puts his wife.
Wife.
Like, why are we having all that external factor? Your wife, your spouse, like both, like the man or the woman, is that priority. So one of the external factors is like it's too many hands in the pot. Everybody has something to say, and everybody has an opinion. And like another like thing that I would say like, is also like an external stressor is like the shift hours. You get, like sometimes couples may see each other twice a week, because when this person is coming in, this person is leaving, this other person is coming in, this other person is leaving. So the fact that people are not able to come together, and they don't, like, they've lost that intimacy, they've lost that communication, they have lost that camaraderie between them, it can act like an external stressor, because people just share, like, again, unmet expectations. You're expecting that, oh, I went to work 12 hours, I want to come back to a clean house. Your wife was working too, so who was going to clean the house? Your
Mm-hmm.
3-year-old child? Like, when
Mm-hmm.
when
Yeah.
was that going to happen? So like
Mm-hmm.
that can also be an external stressor. And as I said again, our community is good, and also it's bad. It's also a bad influence, because I guess it's one of those things that depending on where people are in life, right? Like
Mm,
it's not
I
every
have
time that you
thought.
can
Thank you
give
for joining.
yourself.
We're talking about marriage and challenges we face.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead,
It's
Priska.
it's not every time that you can give yourself like too much based on where you are, like in your relationship, in your career, and in your life. You get, but I guess like it's a good thing for us sometimes. But I guess sometimes it's like it puts like unnecessary pressure, especially on the young couples, to
Mm-hmm.
where it's like it's not every function you're going to go to, and it's okay. It's not every meeting that you're going to join, and it's okay, to
Mm-hmm.
where at times it can also be like an external stressor, because it gets to a point that it's like a self in some sort of, I have to do it to feel accepted. I need
Mm-hmm.
to do
Yeah.
this to feel like I'm succeeding.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas based on where you are, it's okay not
Mm-hmm.
to do those things. If you are
Mm-hmm.
not able to do it, it has to be a choice, not an obligation. But
Yeah.
if one spouse is at a point where you want to do all those things, but another spouse is at a point where I'm just trying to focus on me and my family right now, those community obligations can be another stressor.
Thank you, Priska. Like, I mean, those are so many, and we'll continue to explore these
Yeah.
topics, right? Especially
Mhm.
when it comes to family. I think that's a big thing in our community because most of the time people don't know how to separate that love, right? The family, once you leave a family, that family has their love, which is a different type of love that you have with your wife. So it becomes a problem when people try to mix those two love together. Your mom has her own place. There's the love that you give to your mom. Your wife has her own place, and there's a certain love that you give to your wife. So those two should never mix because that's where there's a lot of conflict. You know, especially, and I think we keep going back to say with men because I feel like if my mom is with me, it's easy for me to control my mom to say, you know, this is and most families or most marriages, you hear women say that I can easily control my mom. I can say, hey, don't say this, don't say that. But I
Mhm.
feel like sometimes men have a problem with that because because us women too were like, okay, now the mom may feel like he's taking his wife's side over me and start feeling some kind of way about her son. So it's just for us to have to understand that these
Yeah.
we do want I want my husband to definitely have a relationship with his mother. I do because that's a good thing. He needs someone like that in his life. But I also want to have my place as the wife to say, okay, when it comes to your home, this is your home. You both make the decisions, right? You don't get a third party to come make the decisions in the house that you guys have built together. That
Mhm.
causes a lot of strife in a relationship because when it comes to that, the husband and the wife, they need to make those decisions to their best interest. If there are other things that we need to come together to do for the family, let's agree on what we want to do for that family and make sure that it's something that we are in accord. So those are a lot of stressors that we actually see breaking up a lot of homes. And then,
Yeah.
you end up having to blame one person or the other.
Mhm.
So,
And it's
Josie,
definitely not easy to. I think sometimes we try to look at it only from one point of view, but since we're talking about the men per se, like sometimes it's not also easy. I think also putting some blame on the African moms because there's a certain level of expectations that they're wanting, and they may not
Mhm.
want to accept that the wife is now the most important person in his life, and
Yes,
so the
that's
mom will
true.
put pressure on this, and now he feels conflicted. Now he doesn't want to hurt his mom, who literally has been there for him from birth, versus now the wife. And so I think also the African man, the husband, struggles too. And so
Yeah. Oh,
sometimes they
yeah.
feel like, well, I mean, I don't want to hurt none of them. So
Mhm.
what do I do?
Exactly. They're caught in between that net. And most of the time too, because our moms were brought up a certain way and they have that African culture, when they come here and they see that things are different, they don't like that. And then it's kind of like they can put things in the man's mind, right? That, "Oh, I can't believe that your wife does this, she does this, she says it, says that." So those can cause conflicts in relationships. So, Josie, I think
Right.
the next question was to you. And we were talking about, let's see, that was what happens when someone marries from back home and brings their partner to the US. Because now, when we start having these issues, what we're noticing is that the men are probably getting tired to say, "Oh my gosh, that woman now, she does not conform with the culture. She's too much." They now run and go back home now to marry. We even have men who've gone back there, married some women, and they leave them there, or they're still planning to bring those women here. So, what do you think happens when people tend to go back home and bring their partners here in the US?
The short answer for why men in the diaspora go back home to marry is I don't know. If I were back home and a man came from the diaspora and proposes marriage, I will never marry them. Like, you left what, 700 million women where you are to come find me? What are you looking for? What's wrong with you?
Mhm.
Right? Particularly in situations where this person has, I understand if you were dating someone back home and then you traveled and then you went back and continued your relationship, and you get married and you eventually bring them over here. But if you're here, you've been living here for years and years and years, and then when it's time to get married, you start asking people, who do you know that I can marry? Like, I tell people, I can't recommend anybody. Sorry, that
Yeah,
is not it. I don't care if you're
yeah.
the best
No
man you've
hookups.
been. I'm not. Go find them yourself.
Mhm.
And it's a challenge. I want to say 50% of those marriages end up in divorce.
Of course.
I know cases that as soon as the person gets here, they already had plans.
Oh, yeah.
They will stay till their green card comes, and then they are off to
Yeah.
their person that they arranged with to go live with, and they just take off.
Yeah.
And
They're
there's
just using them as a means of transportation, really.
for at least 50% of the cases.
Yeah.
But there are also cases that work out really good. I know a case, practically the person had been here for a long time and their friend recommended. So the person who was here is a guy. So the guy had been here for a long time, and they really desired to marry someone from back home, from their tribe, which they were not fortunate to meet here. And so a friend of theirs recommended their friend, and they got married. It's been over 15 years and they're doing fine. They have kids. Everything's worked out for them. But in most cases, particularly nowadays, within the past 5 years,
Mhm. It don't work out.
50% won't even last a year.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm. Yeah.
So, but for me, I feel like the primary problem is with the man who decides to go marry back home. Like there are all sorts of women here. First of all, you have to be, depending on their motive, some of them is because of the cultural aspect that you mentioned, that women here are advanced, they know too much. You know, you want to go get someone who doesn't know anything, but they're eventually going to know everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There are some women back home that are even worse than the ones here. Because these days, the world is a global village. Everything is on the palm of people's hands. You can learn whatever you want to learn. There are people in Cameroon who know more about America than I do.
Yeah, we do. That's true. That's
right?
true. That's true.
So
And I think we're
they're
also
not
seeing women. There are women who are going back to marry, the ones with the really bad attitude that nobody can take over here. I'm seeing them going back to get married over there.
yeah.
Yeah.
And the one thing that people need to come to terms with themselves is some men are not husband materials and some women are not wife materials. That's just the truth. So if you're listening to me, figure yourself out. Are you a player? Are you a husband? Are you a Gen Z body, millennial body? Just be, be you.
Right.
If
Not
marriage is
everybody
not your
has,
thing, don't
yeah.
force it. And
Yeah.
don't deceive someone who may genuinely be looking for this. And some people, please don't pretend to like somebody just to come abroad. It's not going to end well for you. The psychological trauma, please call off the wedding. It's okay. Don't put yourself through that and then end up living in your own shadow for the rest of your life.
Right.
I was just gonna say that, Josie, you may be the only one I've ever heard who say they will not, because
I
usually
won't.
when it comes abroad, it's like, do you marry them in a heartbeat? Just because it's also kind of like what we talked about immigration, right? You see this as an opportunity for a new life. This is somebody who's gonna take you
All
abroad, and
types of abuse.
so a lot of people use that. It could be one of the reasons why they also want to come over here, but I don't think I've ever heard somebody say they will not.
I will not. Believe me,
Poverty too.
I
You
will
know,
judge the
most
man. I'll be like, what's wrong with you?
yeah, most people are also poor, so they're like, "Oh my God, America, Wanda." Oh my,
Exactly.
they're like, they don't care even if you're married. Most women back home, if your husband goes over there and leave you here, you know the women are all
Oh
over the
yeah.
man.
The
Yeah,
thing
and
is,
because
if you see it
polygamy
as an
too, it's okay back
opportunity,
home. Most women are just used to that. They There are women who literally date married men and they're living comfortably. They don't even
and
care that the
that's
man
their
is married.
choice, right?
Yeah.
That's their choice. And if you choose to be with someone because you want to migrate, and that's your at least be honest with them to an extent and say, hey, bro, I want us to do a 10-year contract. We'll do it. I'll want 2 children for you or 3 if they come. And then after that, I'm out.
That's the modern wife or modern woman speaking in you, Josie.
I
I
know, right?
know. I know.
That's
That's
what
what
That's
it
I'm
mo-
is.
oh
saying.
no, these women will jump on your
Oh,
man
they'll
real
jump on
quick.
it.
They will.
But,
And
but
then
what
it may not
Josie,
even be a choice too, just like we're saying, poverty. Just, I mean, they're just like,
Well,
this person
I
is here
totally,
to rescue
and
me.
I'll take it back. Maybe if this was me 20 years ago, I may be a victim of that. But knowing me, I will make the conscious effort to be as transparent as possible. And
Right.
also because it leads to all kinds of abuse,
That's true. That's
like
true.
verbal abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse, like you, to an extent, particularly if you're in a relationship because of the purpose of migration and taking advantage of the opportunity that's in front of you, you're abusing your own self to an extent because you won't be happy because you didn't really do that because you like that person, you wanted to be with them, you want to have a family with them. And some people have external pressure on them. Hey, this person come up bush one can marry you know one time. What's the worry you? And
I
then
was gonna
they will
chip in on that
succumb to
too.
that pressure. And then even when they're with the person, they're just managing. Meanwhile, they're dying in silence.
That's another thing. I'm gonna add to what Josie just said because like once she made a comment of where right now somebody coming back home to get married is a red flag. I've had those conversations of recent now. At first, I would not see it, but right now, from a lot of experiences, I know. Like, first things first, it's a red flag, right
Yep.
up. Like what Josie said, it's a red flag.
Yeah.
With all the women here, why didn't you get married here? As she said,
Exactly.
if it's a relationship that started, the moment you're trying to do a hookup, like I know this. What about you? It's so bad that you have not met nothing here, no relationship, no serious person. Like, did somebody broke your heart? Like, that's one of the things that you have to investigate. Like, put your FBI cap on. If you have to find out somebody that knows this person and find out about who they are and then do so. And again, as Josie rightly mentioned, like that family pressure, people underestimate the effect of emotional and verbal abuse, the
Mhm.
destruction that it does to a person and their
Yes.
soul. You
Yes,
get
for life. It's for
for
life.
life, because people feel like I have an experience right now. This lady, this girl, she's young. And because this guy's from abroad, like he clearly abuses her. It's a long distance relationship, but there is already abuse. Like the verbal and emotional abuse, because that's what he can afford because he cannot physically abuse
Doesn't
her.
know better.
No, because they're on the phone, right? But her family knows this, but because he's from abroad, like she
Oh.
proposed and she said yes. Like she
Mhm.
has some of her sisters telling her it's bad, but her mom is the biggest one cheering her on, you get? And it's still one of those things that like the mentality, like, oh, if this guy can provide, if it's abroad, then it's a
Right.
done deal. But it's like, at what cost? At the
Right.
cost, because people always feel like I can come and go. Will you be able to come and go? And even
Right.
if you go a year, 2 years down the line, what version of you is going? Are
Yeah.
you ever going to recover? And if
Mhm.
unfortunately you bring in a child in that toxic pot, what is their life going to look like? So you're literally recreating generational abuse, generational
Trauma.
cycles of trauma that is not really worth it at all. Like, God has a plan for everybody.
Yeah.
If it's
Yeah.
in your destiny to come abroad, trust me, you are going to come in a better, more fulfilling way. But through that means, especially if there's not that transparency, especially if the person is not right for you, especially if you have not done like all your background or you're already seeing red flags,
Yeah.
it's not worth it at all.
So
The
guys,
downside,
listen to Priska. Do your research. Put your FBI hat on. Do your research, okay?
the
Because if someone
downside,
is already on the phone and abusing you emotionally, then you can only imagine what will happen when
Mhm.
that person is there and you're with them physically. Because a lot of times, emotional abuse, I mean, physical abuse always stem from emotional abuse.
Yes.
Yes. So, um, well, we're moving on. Josie, it seemed like you wanted to wrap up with this so we can move on to the last segment.
yeah, I wanted to add that I feel like sometimes too, the challenge comes from the person at the receiving end. So, for example, a guy leaves the diaspora to go marry back home and meets this person or this lady who, even with all the obvious red flags, has not matured enough or developed their emotional maturity to identify the red flags, even, or even matured themselves to where they know who they want as a partner to say, this is not the one. That's another thing we need to look at as a community in our journey to empower each other, to empower the younger women to know themselves first, know what they expect, and know what to look for in a man that they want to be with for the rest of their lives. Know some red flags to identify so that when he's in front of them, they can identify it. Sometimes I even add yellow flags. Don't wait till it's red. See the warning signs and slow down and ask yourself questions and do some research. Priska, to your point, I'll tell you a story about my culture. At least in my family, when my older brother was going to get married, there was a whole delegation that was sent to go do background check on the family, right? Like, do they stay married? You know, little things. Do they fight? Do they stuff like that? Because my household, I never saw my parents fight. None of my parents ever beat me. If they did, I don't remember. I was too young to remember. And I can remember everything from around age 4 and up. So I guess they were doing their research to see that this person is going to be a match. When a brother brought, so when I brought my husband, of course, he's not from my tribe, their hands were tied, but they still did some type of research to see that it, and they're not doing that to reject the person. They're doing that to say, hey, did you know that they do this? How are you going to handle it? Right. So
that's a really good point, Josie, and good thing
I
that your
think we
family
need to
was
empower.
educated. Yeah, it's good that your family was educated enough to do that. But how many people do that? You know, back home, like they said, the woman is
Nowadays,
raised. The woman is raised to get married. So for the most part, when a man comes, like the family is happy that a man is here. You barely see people do such researches, and it's good that things are evolving. We need to
right.
learn from these things to say, hey, do your research. You know, getting married just because it's convenient, or sometimes it's even the parents, like one of you said, is the parents who are pushing because they're like, okay, this woman needs to get married by this age, or they'll say you're ripe for marriage. So if you're not married by a certain age, then it's kind of like you're a loser. The family is like worried. And then it puts that pressure on women too, because they get to a certain age and, oh my God, I'm not married by this age. And then they start falling into those traps to say, okay, let me just get married because you know what? I cannot be alone. I feel like a loser. I want to have my kids. So those pressures, like people need to learn to live to the best of their ability. You don't have to marry. Marriage is not for everyone. You know, some people will say, oh, it's because you have
That's where
married, you
we
have
come
your
in,
kids.
because we need
Yeah.
to empower and educate.
Exactly. So people need to know that it's okay. Even when you see people married, doesn't mean that because they're in the marriage, it's that good. You know, the way you rush into the marriage is the way you're going to be rushing out of it too. So do your research and know what's going on. So we're moving to the.
Let me, sorry. Nowadays, it's even easier to do the research with social media and all these things. It's
Yeah.
easier.
Oh,
Most
yeah.
women who are looking to marry are already in their 20s, the Gen Z bodies and up, right? In their 20s and or older. So most of them, unless you're living in, you know, in a part of the country where there's no internet, there's no network, a lot of people have access to smart devices and can look up stuff and can call people, you know, and ask about other people. So just that basic research can help. And knowing the warning signs can really go a long way.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that conclusion on that, Josie. So we're moving on to the last segment, which is the important part. This is where we come with all the advices to kind of make sure that people are getting into the right relationships, and when they do get there, what can they do to actually keep the relationship? So, okay.